Okay guys, welcome back to part 2. So carbs are off and we're trying to discover, if you remember from part 1, why this FZR1000 EXUP is running so rich. Right, well the first thing I found, taking it apart, was this air filter is absolutely rammed with dirt. Now, part of the conversation with the guy was, what have you done, what's been done, etc, etc. And one of the things he said, well, one of the questions I had was, when were the valve clearances last done? And he said, oh, maybe 1,000 miles ago. And I'm sorry, but with an air filter like that, there's no way in the world anybody with any sort of brain at all, let's put it that way, would not clean the air filter whilst it's out and you're doing the valve clearances. The other thing that makes me think the valve clearances haven't been done is, I'll show you a shot of it now, but it just doesn't look like it's been disturbed. There's sort of dirt on it, you get the idea. So I'm immediately thinking, I don't believe anything this owner's telling me, which is not a great position to be in, and it's not nice to say that about, you know, a conversation you've had with somebody, but telling me the valve clearances are done very recently, and I don't know, that doesn't ring true. So what else have I found? So generally not really that dirty. So they've been soaking overnight. Let me get these little jet holders out of here. So if you look in here, see how this has gone green? So this chemical I use, that I have made for me, secret sauce, will stay clear if there's no varnish contamination. And as it dissolves the varnish contamination on the jets, it turns green. So the jets weren't clean. They weren't bad, but they were definitely in need of cleaning. I've also flushed the carb bodies through all the passageways. Didn't really get a lot of gunk out of them, to be honest with you. This end one, which is number 1, I thought the main air jet might have been slightly blocked on that one, so that would have a richening effect, if that makes sense. Then the other things I've found, so I've been looking at how to put this. So he also told me that it had new slide needles and new emulsion tubes. Well, I don't believe that either, to be honest with you. So anyway, the first thing, fucking hell, all over the place. So you need to be looking, so are the jets the correct sizes? I mean, that's sort of basic stuff, isn't it? So the pilots, I don't know whether they're seeing that, the pilots are 40s and the mains are 125s, which check out correctly, so that's good. And then the needles, I was wondering whether they were correct, and they are correct. So they're 5CEW8s, and according to the manual, they're correct. Now he's telling me, like I just said, I think, that these needles are new. Look at the wear on that, where it's been chattering against the slide. And then if we move it down here and rotate it, I don't know whether that's coming out on camera, but these needles have got a bit of wear on them. I mean, they're not done yet, but they're definitely not new. There's thousands and thousands of miles on them. And then the other weird thing I found, on one of the needles, there's a fucking massive O-ring underneath the eye, and that's only on one of them. So that's clearly going to cause a rich condition. So I have no idea who's been in here messing around. I mean, he's telling me these needles were replaced with new, and the emulsion tubes were replaced with new. Yeah, so that's what I found so far. So main jets are the right size, pilots are the right size. Possibly blocked air jet on this one. A ridiculous O-ring under a slide needle. Some wear on the slide needles. And oh, and the other thing was the idle mixture screws were 3 3/4 turns out, which I suspect, because the idle jets, the pilot jets, are a little bit blocked, and I think somebody's been trying to get the idle mixture somewhere near right by, rather than cleaning them, adjusting the idle mixture screw to get it, because if you remember back to part 1, it was about 14:1, wasn't it, at idle? So the mixture was about dead nuts on, which with 40 pilot jets, like nearly 4 turns out, should have been super rich. So the pilot jets were definitely dirty. So there's that. So I'm a sort of little bit all over the place with this. So what I think I'm going to do, because based on the evidence so far, I've basically got to, and this is bad to say this, I've basically got to ignore everything the customer's telling me. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of this ridiculous O-ring from under here, and there's obviously some wear on these needles, so I'm going to drop that needle. By the way, that circlip is in the correct position, position 3, so you count down from the top, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to, come on Jim, get your waffle over and done with. I'm going to drop these needles 1 circlip groove. I'm going to get rid of that O-ring, obviously. I'm going to clean them properly, put them all back together, put the idle mixture screws at 2.5 turns out, and then we've got some sort of baseline settings then. I'm going to put a set of plugs in it. While I'm doing the plugs, I'm going to do a compression test. I'm going to put it back together. Thankfully, the carbs are pretty easy to get on and off, so we haven't got to fight fight too much. So I'll get some sort of baseline settings with a clean set of carburetors, flush everything through. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about, talking of flushing everything through. Sorry, more wafflage. I don't want to give all my trade secrets away, but part of my carb cleaning process. So this jet, this one here, get it in the shot. So that one has been in the chemical that removes all the varnish contamination. You can see actually it needs to go, see on the screw thread there, see those little green bits? So it actually could do with going in a little bit longer, but the chemical eats away at that varnish contamination. And then there's another chemical process which that jet's been through. You see the difference? So that is just raw brass now. Let's get it in shot. So yeah, that's absolutely raw brass. So this one's had the first stage of the chemicals, and that one's had the second stage. Anyway, just, I don't know, is it interesting? Maybe not. Waffling. Going to clean these, put them back together, put all the settings back to stock, apart from the slide needle dropped 1 groove on the circlip. Try and take out some of that wear, well, not really take the wear out, but just lean it off a little bit on the needle. Set of plugs in it, compression test it, and let's see where we end up. I think that's, and then we've got a sort of known good starting point then, or not necessarily good starting point, but we've got a starting point where we know the jets are standard, and you know what I'm saying. Anyway, wafflage, I'm going to do that, and then I'll bring you back in when the carbs are on the bike. Obviously we'll balance the carbs once they're on the bike, might show you that. Let's go and have another ride with the AFR meter on the tank and see if we're closer to being correct. Right, see you soon. Righto, so carbs are almost back together. Thought I'd share a little top tip with you. So float level or fuel level in the float bowl, the same thing but different. So most manufacturers, speak properly Jim, like what I do, most manufacturers will give you a specification for the float height, and that's usually a measurement from the gasket surface on the float bowl to the top of the float. You need to check your workshop manual because you know there are differences, but essentially that's what it is. The reason they're giving you that measurement is what they're actually really interested in is the level of the fuel in the float bowl. That's what's going to make the mixture either richer or leaner. It has the level of fuel in the float bowl has more of an effect on, you know, the rich lean condition of an engine or the way the carburetor works than you would think. It's pretty mission critical really. So in this case, what the manufacturer has done is they've cast a little line into the casting of this float bowl. You see that? And then what you do is you get a piece of pipe, and you get the idea. So you have a clear piece of pipe with the drain screw open, and then that then gives you a perfect representation of the fuel level inside the float bowl. Does that make sense? And then not with all manufacturers, but if you look in the workshop manual, there'll often be a picture of or a graphical representation of the carburetor body, and they'll show you where to measure the fuel level from. In this case it's easy because we've got this line here. So I'll work my way along, check the fuel level in each of these float bowls, and yeah, we can get the carbs on, get them synced, and let's see if we've improved things. That's number 4. That's number 3. Starter sounds a bit scrapey. Uh-oh. Surely not. Fucking hell. Stand by. Let's make sure that's tight. You know, I always say, do a compression test before you do any other work. I might have just got burnt here. Right. Contact. Not buying it. Surely not. Put my finger over there. This thing has got no compression on number 2 cylinder. What the fuck? Fucking hell, just over 100 psi if you let it build. See what number 1's up to. Fucking hell, all over the place. Number 1's stolen all number 2's compression. 200 psi. Let's go back to number 2. Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't compression test this first. Mind you, I haven't exactly spent a long time on the carburetors, so it's not the end of the world, but a little bit cross with myself for not compression testing it first. I always say, if you've got any carburation related issues and it's got, you know, something's got high mileage, this has got 73,000 on it, always do a compression test. Right. That's very poorly. Uh-oh. Fuck. That's not good, is it? It's barely worth putting a new set of plugs in it. Although, it doesn't really, to be fair, account for the, you know, the 9:1 AFR ratio. I mean, it's very, very sick. What am I going to do now? I'm going to put some plugs in it. I'm going to balance the carbs. Yeah, I think this calls for a cup of tea, to be honest with you, or maybe even something stronger. Let me think on this for a minute and I'll be back.